This is Brian Prawitz, Executive Director of the Umpqua Economic Development Partnership and former Roseburg City Councilor. He's also the President of Roseburg High School Foundation. Thanks for making time out of your busy schedule. I have a few questions to ask you. The first one is, how would you define leadership?
I would define leadership by saying that leadership is complicated. There's a lot of different ways you can be a leader. Leadership sometimes is making a decision that might not be the most popular, but that is the best for whatever the group of people is that you're leading. Sometimes leadership is leading by example. Leadership is being held to a higher standard because people look at you differently if you're a leader. And sometimes you have to make decisions as a leader that your friends don't really like, but that match the goals that you have been put in a position to execute. So there's a lot of ways leadership can be defined.
I totally agree. Qualities do you believe make a strong leader?
Well, a strong leader needs to be honest and hardworking and well-informed and I was going to say popular or liked, but actually that isn't true. You can be a leader and not be popular and be liked. Sometimes it takes other people deciding for you that you're their leader, and so that kind of makes you popular. But if you're trying to maintain friends and be popular and be a leader, that sometimes that can be really hard to do. In fact, it might be impossible to do. So you have to be confident and you have to make sure that you have done your homework. It helps to be very honest and very transparent and somebody who's respected.
Okay. Another question I have is, how do you handle criticism or setbacks?
Well, those are two different things. First of all, criticism is just part of being a leader. So you know that you're not always going to have everyone agree with the decisions that you make. And there are usually many different ways to achieve a goal, which means that, let's say there's 5 ways to achieve the goal and you have 5 people that you're leading. It's possible that each of them would like one of those 5 ways to be the way. Well, if you pick one, you're going to upset 4 no matter what, even if you achieve the goal. So there's always going to be criticism. Usually what I do is I have people who I really trust and admire, and I really want their opinion on things. I'll talk to them first before I make a decision, and then the other people that criticize me, I don't worry about so much, because if I'm leaning into and trusting other leaders that I see as mentors, they've given me good decisions or give good information, and I'm probably going to get criticized. But if I understand what the criticism might be or where those other people are coming from, it's a lot easier to take. Setbacks are different than criticism. Setbacks would be that you decide to lead and you go in a direction and then something breaks or fails and there's a problem. And that's also part of life. I mean, you're never going to be perfect all the time. And so when you run into a setback, you just figure out a way around it and continue to lead, and you will be criticized because the thing might not have been perfect. But if you're trying as hard as you can and you're all the things that we just talked about, you're well educated, you understand the problem, and people respect you, then you can get around those setbacks and continue leading.
100% agree. Describe a difficult decision that you had to make as a leader.
Yeah, I mean, on Roseburg City Council, there were a lot of those. There were a lot of situations where there was a lot of money invested involved in the decision and people's livelihoods and stuff. So if you make a decision for the city of Roseburg on, for instance, the way an intersection is going to be created. So if you think about the intersection, kind of over by Albertsons. It's Stewart Parkway and Edenbauer. That's where those two big long left turn lanes are when you're going to go toward Applebee's, you know?
Yeah.
We were making decisions about how that intersection was going to be built. And the design of that really impacted the small business building that's sitting there kind of where Lily's is, or where Douglas Timber Operators and Go Prime Mortgage is. That whole complex, suddenly you couldn't get in there easily. And so, but we had a budget and we had a certain amount of space, and there were some timelines, and ODOT was involved, the Oregon Department of Transportation. All these very complicated pieces of this had to be part of the decision. We made the decision to go forward in a certain way, and the owner of that building came to city council and said, you just cut off all the ability of all my customers to make it into my building. You got to figure out a way to fix that. And so we did some things to help, but it wasn't a perfect answer. And so for the benefit and the safety of everybody who travels through that intersection, the people that operate out of that building and the building owner himself, they kind of ended up taking a loss, essentially. Probably financially, you could argue, but it was hard on them, but we had to make that decision. And so that was a pretty big decision that we had to make. And there were a lot of others as well, but that's the first one that comes to mind.
Yeah. Looking back, would you make any decisions differently? Why or why not?
Yeah. What I learned through that and a couple of other decisions that we had to make is that what I wish I would have done is I wish I would have talked to that business owner, the person who owned that building, more before I made the decision. There were a few decisions I can think of while on city council that really impacted people, and I did not talk to them before I made that decision. And I wish I would have done that, to go to them and say, hey, this is the direction I think we're going. How is that going to impact you? And then if I still would have made the same decision, at least I would have made it knowing that that problem would have existed, instead of sort of surprising them and not being informed. You might remember one of the things I said about being a good leader is being really well informed. And that's an example of why I said that. See how you answer these
I want to
questions.
be able to answer.
All right.
Okay. How do you balance what's right and what's popular?
Man, this is hard-hitting stuff. Is anybody else going to see this? Balancing what's right versus what's popular. So, one of the things I thought about when I knew we were going to talk today is the danger of leading by consensus. So sometimes, like, you might think that being a leader means asking every single person affected by a decision for their opinion, and then deciding to do the thing that most people want. But in reality, every decision is usually equally opposed. If there is one decision, one option that's more popular, it's probably barely more popular than the other. In life, there are not huge, obvious, clear directions to go. It's never that simple. So you're always balancing what people's opinion is of a decision you're going to make versus what's right. Well, that's also kind of subjective as well. What's right? Well, what's right to you might not be what's right to me. If we were to, I don't know, I'm not going to be able to pull an analogy out of my hat, but doing what's popular versus what's right. So, the definition of what's right. So, in a leadership role, you should have enough organization within the organization that you're leading to have a certain set of goals. So, Roseburg High School Foundation, we have a mission, we have a vision, we have rules, we have bylaws. Many times you need to go back and look at those in order to say, for this organization, this is the right decision to make. And it might not be popular, but if it follows the formula and the groundwork and the parameters of the organization you're leading, then that's the right decision to make. So it's not easy, and sometimes they choose a different leader after you make some of these decisions. But between being what's popular and what's right, you got to go back to the point of the organization that you're leading and figure it out. See and make sure that the decision you're making is right for that organization at that time.
What you're doing is right.
Wow. Well, that's where you might want to talk to people that you trust. Go talk to other leaders. See if anybody else has gone through that same decision-making process and see how they handled it. Learn from them, from the past. And also that's why you want leaders that are of high integrity and are held to a high standard, because if there is no template, if there is no example to follow, and we've been in that situation too. I mean, there are situations where nobody's done this before. COVID, for instance, nobody had gone through COVID. Nobody knew what the rules were. Nobody knew the right way to go through it. And so in that point, you have to follow what you believe to be right in your opinion and your experience, which is also another good trait of a leader, is someone who's had a good experience. So they have a lot of different things to pull from. But yeah, that's another really hard-hitting question, Frankie. Well done.
I think that's a really good way to explain it.
I was part of a statewide leadership organization in 2017 called ALF, the American Leadership Forum.
ALF.
And for an entire year, every month, I got together with about 20 other leaders from around the state of Oregon who were very different than me, who had lots of different life experiences than I did, and really saw life differently than I did. And I got to spend an entire year learning from them to see what it was like to kind of walk in their shoes, to get a perspective that I hadn't had before, and seeing the world through their eyes and trying to understand what it would be like to be in their shoes was transformative to me. And I'm very thankful for that. And I made some very deep friendships through that process. And it has made me, it gives me a network of people I can reach out to. And I think it's made me a better leader because I have more compassion for people that aren't like me. And we have so many different communities in our community in Roseburg and in Douglas County. And so learning how to stand up for them and in moments that they need it, or to stand with them in moments they need it, has been one of the most transformative things. And it came from my experience with the ALF program.
Who wants to improve their leadership skills?
I would say to a student who wants to improve their leadership skills to get involved in lots of different things. Tell other adult leaders that you know that you want to learn leadership, and they might give you a book to read or a podcast to listen to, or maybe they'll give you the opportunity to lead. Sometimes it's really good to be the assistant leader in an organization for a while to kind of learn and occasionally do things like run a meeting or that kind of a thing. So I think a student who wants to be more of a leader should find leaders they want to emulate, and then just try to learn everything you possibly can from that person, including even when a student would take a leadership role, keep close tabs with that other leader and reach out when you run into these sticky situations that we've described, so that you have a way to learn and to have an example to follow.
What is a person in a leadership role you look up to?
I look up to so I'm in economic development, as we described, and I look up to other people that have been in a similar role that I've been in for a long time, and I want to emulate them. And so I have a guy named Randy Cox over in Klamath Falls that I really look up to. I have people in this community like Rachel Pokran from Umpqua Community College, who I really have a lot of respect for. There's that lady you may know named Susie Johnston Forte. I really look up to her as well. So those are a few people. Plus, a good friend of mine named Seth Bueckley would be another person I look up to.
What traits do they share that makes you look up to them?
They have lived experiences that I really respect and admire. They are able to give me perspective when I ask them for help that really helps me. They're willing to spend time with me on my problem, and I might think it's not worth their time, but they give me all that focus and attention. And so it's like they hear me and they see me and they want to help me. And so that makes me want to, that makes me look up to them, especially if they've been through hard times or if they've been through similar situations that I am going through and the experiences that I'm having.
Yeah. Thank you for scheduling to meet me today.
Absolutely, Frankie. You're the man.
I think I need to
You should know how to say my name, but maybe you don't.
Alex.
Executive Director.
This is Brian Prawitz, Executive Director of the
That's fine.
I didn't
And
figure out that
here,
one.
Roseburg High School Foundation. Okay.
This is Brian Prawitz.
What? You trip over? It's okay. Just say it over again. Keep going. Don't laugh. Break out. You know? Just keep going. Everybody makes mistakes.
Do you want to practice the line first,
Yeah.
1-2 times, and then after that we can film?
Not to laugh.
Yeah, you're doing great.
Okay.
I'll come up with something. I'm sure we'll be fine.
Okay. And then the first question is, how would you define leadership?
Okay. So are you going to ask me that on camera? Or?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, great.
Do you like it?